And this is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up, one-on-one with Meg Whitman in a Bloomberg exclusive. The Hewlett Packard Enterprise CEO joins us live from Las Vegas on maintaining profitability in the age of the cloud. Plus, one day before former FBI Director James Comey testifies before the Senate, President Trump tweets the name of his potential successor. We'll tell you more about former DOJ official Christopher Wray. And with just hours to go before the UK general election, online voting is front and center. We'll break down the pros and the cons. First, to our lead. The annual HPE Discover Conference is happening this week, and the company has outlined how it will continue to grow and stay competitive in the age of cloud computing. Hewlett Packard Enterprise CEO Meg Whitman joins us now live for an exclusive interview from the Discover Conference in Las Vegas. Meg, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah. Happy to be here, Emily.
So you're almost 2 years post-split now. Tell us what your #1 message is to customers today as the technology shifts beneath us.
Well, I think there's two very important messages. First is we believe the world is going to be hybrid, and our objective is to make hybrid IT simple. What do I mean by that? I mean applications will be on-prem, off-prem, in the cloud, and each customer has to find the right mix for them. And a lot of customers are rethinking, do they want to put as many applications in the cloud as they had originally thought, because for reasons of price and control, it may be better to keep it on-prem. So we make hybrid IT simple. And then another really big opportunity for customers is the edge. If you think about campus, branch, factory floors, the edge, everything other than your data center is exploding in terms of the need to collect data, compute it, and store it.
There have been a lot of questions about margins in particular. Why is the environment so difficult right now?
Well, our margin in Enterprise Group, which is the major part of the go-forward company, Hewlett Packard Enterprise, was down a little bit in Q2. And the reason is we had stranded costs from our divestitures. We had done some acquisitions that will be initially dilutive. And then, of course, we have significant commodity cost increases. But we anticipate that margin will go back up to historic levels by Q4. And then if we can continue to grow our high margin products and our growth products like Aruba and our all-flash storage arrays and Gen 10, our new server that is the most secure server in the world, then I think you'll see really nice financial performance from us as we finish the year.
What's the strategy to get costs down to help with the margin issue?
Yeah. So we have to really now, we have a much smaller, much more focused company. And I can tell you, I'm probably the only CEO in America that enjoys running a smaller company rather than a bigger company, because it's so much simpler. And we have an overhead cost structure that we've got to get down to be more in line with the new company we run. We've got to re-engineer some processes to make things simple. And that's going to lead us, I think, to be able to take out more cost and be even more cost competitive in a very competitive market. Listen, volume servers, very competitive business. We need to have a more cost-effective cost structure there.
On that note, when we spoke this time last year, you said that Dell was making a big mistake by merging with EMC. That said, HPE stock and growth has been under pressure. Has any of that led you to reconsider whether smaller really is still smarter?
No, so we're really proud of our financial performance and our stock price performance since the split from Hewlett Packard, from HP Inc. to Hewlett Packard Enterprise. And listen, if you think of the stock price of the company as a whole, which reached the low of $11.62 in the fall of 2012, if you add up HP Inc., Hewlett Packard Enterprise, our share of CXC, which is now DXC, and our share of the software company, that is close to between $48 and $50 a share. So we've created a lot of shareholder value, and our stock has done very well since we split off from HP Inc. almost 18 months ago.
When it comes to M&A, does Dell have an advantage, or can they play hardball better because they're private?
Well, listen, there are some advantages to being private, right? But actually Dell, because their debt is publicly traded, we have a window into Dell's financials in much the same way as a public company. They don't get the scrutiny that we do. And we really like our hand. You know, we have no debt on the company. In fact, we have about $6 billion of net cash on the company. We've gotten more strategic and more focused. We're smaller, we're nimbler. And we have dry powder to make acquisitions and make investments, and we can turn on a dime now, which, you know, is just a different strategy than Dell. They're getting bigger, we're getting smaller, they're leveraging up the company, we're deleveraging, and we're leaning into new technology, everything software defined and the edge, and they're doubling down on old technology and a cost takeout play. So it's a different strategy. I like our hand.
As you weigh whether to turn on that dime when it comes to M&A, how reasonable are valuations right now?
So they've become a lot more reasonable in the last 6 months. We've made an acquisition almost one a month for the last 6 months. And the valuations are coming down because venture capital is getting a little tighter in Silicon Valley. The willingness to fund ongoing losses for indeterminate amounts of time, that appetite is shrinking a little bit. So we bought SimpliVity right, we bought, I think, Nimble right, we bought Cloud Cruiser right, and they are dead on to our strategy of making hybrid IT simple, powering the intelligent edge, and you know, the services that we need to make it all happen. So we're feeling good about the opportunity to make reasonably priced acquisitions that fit our strategy.
So what are the attractive targets? What areas are of interest on your radar?
Yeah. So we're interested in a number of areas, but first is the software-defined data center. So think about SimpliVity. That is really more a software company than it is an infrastructure company, but it's all around deploying applications easily in a hyper-converged environment. So we're very interested in software-defined. Nimble is software-defined. It's, you know, all-flash storage for entry-level and mid-tier. We're also interested in the edge. Obviously, Aruba was an incredible acquisition for us, growing 33%, the wireless part of Aruba, 33% in the last quarter. We're super excited about that. We bought Niara, which is basically, think about it as machine learning for security on the edge network. And so we continue to look at acquisitions at the edge.
You've spun off your enterprise services business, but you're still in services with Point Next. How does the services business evolve?
Yeah, so services is going to be an important part of our mix because every company is trying to take their data center on a transformation journey from an older, brittle, high cost, not particularly flexible or agile environment to the new environment that is so essential for their competitive, their ability to win in the market. And services, people need help on that journey. So while we will not do ITO, IT outsourcing or business process outsourcing or apps maintenance, we will do advise and transform, and that's what Point Next is. So we think it's an important part of the business. The other part of our business is the ecosystem of partners. Here at Discover in Las Vegas, we have the biggest presence of partners, SIs, ISVs, that we've had in many, many years. So we've got a lot of folks here anxious now to do business with us because they don't view us as having an asset that is competitive to what they do. So we are still very focused with DXC technology, but we got a whole bunch of players who are really interested in doing business with us now, and that's great.
Now, Meg, there's always great fascination around what your future holds. How long do you plan to continue running things at HPE?
Yeah, so I love what I am doing. I have to say, you know, now being head of a smaller, more nimble, faster moving company makes this a lot of fun. And so I love what I'm doing, and I've got more work to do. You know, we've still got another phase in our journey to make HPE everything that it can be. So I'm here until my work is done.
So what is that more work? What more work do you feel you have to do?
So we now have to take this very focused company called Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and we have to make sure we've got a cost structure that allows us to compete in the marketplace. We've still got a little bit too much overhead on this company because we had an overhead that, you know, oversaw a $110 billion company. We've got to take more cost out of that. We've got to redesign some of our systems. We've got to redesign some of our processes to be, you know, more appropriate for a smaller, more nimble company. So we've got some more cost takeout to do, and we've got a lot of innovation coming to market, and I want to make sure that that innovation lands well, like our Gen 10 server, which you know, is getting rave reviews at this show, it is the most secure server in the world, and everyone knows security is one of the big issues, you know, facing every IT department.
You urged President Trump not to pull out of the Paris Climate Accord along with other business leaders. Hours later, he pulled out. How does that impact your relationship with the president?
Well, listen, you know, as you know, I was on the other side. As a lifelong Republican, I endorsed Hillary Clinton. But once President Trump won, I said to our employees, I wrote a note that said, you know what? President Trump has won. We need to give him the benefit of the doubt. And so we are giving him the benefit of the doubt. But when we think that there is something that is not in our best interest or the country's best interest, you know, I'll speak out. So I said, you know, listen, I thought we ought to stay in the Paris Climate Accord. The next generation of industries around clean energy and others is an important thing for the United States of America. So it doesn't impact our relationship. People can disagree, and we happen to disagree on this particular issue.
Tim Cook also told me that he thinks the president decided wrong on Paris, but plans to keep an open dialogue because he thinks it's important for America, important for the company. What is your strategy, and what are the #1 things on your priority list when it comes to discussions with the White House?
Yeah. So listen, we are in favor of tax reform. We think the ability to repatriate cash overseas at a much lower tax rate is important. We think a lower corporate tax rate would spur growth in the United States. On the other hand, we are not for the border adjustment tax. That's very difficult for companies that import a high degree of their cost of goods sold and work on relatively low margins. So the retailers, a lot of the technology companies, we think that's not in our best interest, and by extension, you know, in the best interest of the United States. So we just make it clear where we stand on issues, very respectful, civil discussion, and that's what this country was built on, the ability for civil discourse and the ability to disagree without being angry.
All right, Meg Whitman, CEO of Hewlett Packard Enterprise, live from the Discover Conference in Las Vegas. Meg, thank you as always for joining us. We will have much more of our conversation with Meg Whitman later this hour. Coming up, President Trump says he will nominate a new FBI director on the eve of former FBI Director James Comey's critical hearing. Details on the nominee next. This is Bloomberg. We have some breaking news now. We just got an emailed statement from Mark Kasowitz, Donald Trump, the president's personal attorney, responding to former FBI Director James Comey's opening statement preceding the remarks that he'll make tomorrow before the Senate. In that statement, Kasowitz says that Trump feels vindicated given that in Comey's opening statement, he confirmed that the president was not personally under investigation by the FBI. Again, Mark Kasowitz, the president's attorney, saying that Trump feels vindicated. Of course, we're going to be following former FBI Director James Comey's critical testimony all day tomorrow on Bloomberg television. Now, on the eve of the highly anticipated congressional hearing of former FBI Director James Comey, his opening statements, as I said, have been released. In them, Comey says President Trump asked him in February to put an end to an investigation into former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Comey also states that the president told him, quote, "I need loyalty," when the two dined alone in the White House in reference to the investigations into Russia. We've also learned President Trump will nominate former Justice Department official Christopher Wray to run the agency. But as investigations into Russia continue and cybersecurity threats increase, is Wray the right man for the job? Joining us now, our Bloomberg News executive editor Winnie O'Kelly, who covers the FBI. Winnie, what do we know about Christopher Wray?
Well, he's a solid prosecutor. I think many people in Washington are immediately saying, hey, he's the best guy on the list. We're pretty happy about this. He has a history of bringing cases. He was at Justice Department after 9/11, was involved in terrorism and other coverage at that time. He went on to oversee the Enron task force, although he did not run it. The prosecution, we failed one of Richard Scrushy of Health South and many other matters. So he's an experienced prosecutor.
So what do you expect his approach to be on issues like cybersecurity, on issues like the Russia investigation?
So a couple things here. First off, he's not going to be overseeing the Russia investigation. Remember, that's now being run by a special counsel by Robert Mueller, who's a former FBI director, formerly had his job, and whom he worked with, by the way, when he was at Justice. So they know each other. They're not strangers. His job is going to be over to see the FBI, and we don't know a lot about what his intents are going to be. I tried to glean some of this by looking back at his 2003 testimony to Congress on the Patriot Act and on fighting terrorism. He was very supportive of the Patriot Act. He was very supportive of sort of new, enhanced surveillance techniques and tools to put the FBI on a more even playing field. For example, he cited the ability, using a provision of the Patriot Act, to get information from internet service providers in order to go after cases. We don't really know how he's going to feel about hacking cases, for example, or, for example, the unlocking of iPhones, which became a very big deal under Comey, and which we feel will come back into the limelight at some point.
All right, Bloomberg's Winnie O'Kelly, thanks so much for joining us. Obviously, we'll continue to follow these new headlines as we get them. Do not miss our special coverage tomorrow of former FBI Director James Comey testifying before the Senate Intelligence Committee on Bloomberg Television and Radio beginning 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. If you have time, check out his 7-page opening statement. It is quite a read. Coming up, ahead of the UK general election, we will dig into online electronic voting. It has been used in elections across the globe, but just how big is the risk of a high-profile attack? This is Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang. Back to our exclusive interview with HPE CEO Meg Whitman. Earlier today, Whitman hit the stage and said HPE is seeing a slowdown in the public cloud. We asked if businesses are really rethinking their move to the cloud and what that means for HPE going forward. Take a listen.
The way we see the world is it's around hybrid IT, and you have to start with your apps and your data. What do you want locked down in your data center, untouched only by your employees' hands? What might you want in a private cloud, on-prem, with public cloud economics, by the way? What would you want in a managed service? And there is a role for public cloud, but we're seeing, for reasons of cost, security, control, that people are beginning to say, I wonder if I have gone too far in putting workloads into the public cloud, and they want to bring those workloads back onto on-prem.
So what does that mean for HPE?
Well, it means that we have to do what's in our customers' best interests, and their best interest is all around creating a multi-cloud environment, a hybrid IT environment, where they can have the right landing spot for their applications and their workloads, and we make sure that they don't end up with vendor lock-in. You know, a lot of people say that once you move something to the public cloud, it's very difficult to move it back, and it's very expensive. So we want to just give customers choice and make sure that we do for them what is best for them.
Now, there have been some questions about your cloud partnership with Microsoft. How is that actually going?
Yeah, it's going well. I mean, it really is going well. We've done a lot of business with Microsoft for many years, and they are our public cloud partner. So when we work with a customer and they say, listen, these are the workloads I'd like to have in the public cloud, then we say, you know what, Azure is a great opportunity. And if you want Azure cloud functionality on-prem, you do Azure Stack. And Azure Stack runs on HP Gear on-prem. And so I think, listen, I think Microsoft's got a very good strategy, and we're great partners with them. And again, it's about giving customers choice. Where do they want their workloads? Where do they want their data? And if they want a public cloud partner, we recommend Azure.
But if they start making some of their own data center equipment, what does that mean for HPE?
Well, this is a dynamic industry, and it's interesting. For a long time, infrastructure wasn't in fashion, but we see all kinds of people now getting into the infrastructure business. So if that's what Microsoft does, then we'll try to figure out how to, have a relationship around co-opetition. Sometimes we cooperate, sometimes we compete. We'll figure out how to work with them. We admire the company a lot, and we'll figure it out.
Now, tech stocks have been on a tear since the election, despite political uncertainty. What are the market dynamics that you see helping or hurting HPE?
Yeah, so it's a challenging global environment right now. There's some countries that are doing very well, and then there's uncertainty in a number of countries, and uncertainty is not good for business. So our strongest market in Europe is Germany. Germany's doing incredibly well. We're selling a lot of business in Germany, but the UK is challenged. Public sector spending is down. The UK firms and people investing in the UK are holding back, I think, because of Brexit. And it doesn't mean they won't spend, but they're kind of paused and saying, gee, I don't know what's going to happen here. Maybe I should just take a little time to think it through. Japan actually is pretty strong for us right now. Australia is coming back. Latin America is doing very well. And the U.S. continues to be a little uneven. Sometimes, one quarter it's quite strong, and then we see a little bit of weakness. So it's a mixed environment. But, listen, we have to make it work in every environment. So we sell as hard as we can and try to give its customers as much choice no matter what's going on in the backdrop.
You've led several different high-profile technology companies. I'm curious what you think about the unicorn startups, what you see them doing well, what you see them doing poorly.
Yeah, so listen, the startup scene in Silicon Valley and elsewhere is alive and well. I mean, it's a renaissance of innovation. I mean, think about what you're seeing. And listen, there's a lot of very innovative companies that are unicorn valuations. What we are seeing is the ability of venture capital money to keep funding money-losing startups we're starting to see a pullback there. And one of the reasons that we were able to buy SimpliVity is it wasn't clear they were going to be able to raise a next round, and they needed to be tucked into a big company. Nimble had a great fundraising round, but felt like now they needed to be tucked into a big company. So we think there's always going to be unicorns, there's always going to be new companies, but we think it does present an opportunity for us as we think about our M&A strategy and our innovation strategy.
HPE is heavily investing in what you call the machine, or your vision for the future of computing. How will this help customers in the future, and how is that vision evolving?
So one of the big challenges our industry faces is the demand to build data centers, the demand for space, and the demand for energy is unsustainable. I mean, we work in parts of the world where there is no more energy on the grid. So that caused us, a number of years ago to think through the fundamental model of compute. It's always been a CPU-centric model, and we said, can we turn that on its head and make it a memory-centric compute, where instead of through copper wires data is moved, it's moved through photonics, which would mean smaller space, far more energy efficiency. And we're super pleased with the progress of the machine. We're already embedding parts of the technology into our next generation servers and storage, and we're super excited about the amount of data that can be processed with very low power utilization and in a small form factor. So it's right on track. It's had its ups and downs, as these big research projects do, but we're super excited about it.
Our exclusive interview there with HPE CEO Meg Whitman. Well, in the latest funding round, Andy Rubin's newest startup, Essential, added $300 million to its war chest as it looks to break into the highly competitive field of consumer electronics. The financing round valued Essential at $900 million to $1 billion. Essential submitted paperwork on the new investments late May, a few days before co-founder Andy Rubin unveiled the first two products, a high-end smartphone and an Amazon Echo-like gadget for the home. Investors in the deal weren't disclosed, and a spokesman for Essential declined to comment. A new report out by Nielsen shows that ratings do not equal social engagement. The company conducted its first social media rating study that includes data from Twitter and Facebook to find what shows were getting the most attention. For example, The Walking Dead was by far the most viral TV show on social media, but was only the 8th most watched show on live television over the last TV season. Trailing behind the AMC Smash show is the Fox hit Empire and ABC's Bachelor franchise. Coming up, we'll take a look at the potential of the autonomous car market with Intel's Stacy Smith, why the tech giant is betting it'll be twice the size of the sharing economy next. This is Bloomberg. Alphabet's self-driving unit Waymo has won a key battle in its case against Uber. A San Francisco magistrate judge ruled that the ride-hailing startup must hand over a document that could shed light on what its executives knew about alleged theft of trade secrets from Waymo. The Google self-driving car project has been seeking a copy of this report as part of its preparation for trial, but Uber has refused to turn it over, citing attorney-client privilege. You will remember that Waymo claimed in a lawsuit earlier this year that former engineer Anthony Lewandowski downloaded more than 14,000 confidential files before leaving to set up a self-driving truck company, which Uber acquired soon after. Speaking of self-driving cars, much has been said about the race to autonomous vehicles, with both startups and tech giants scrambling to the start line. Though less has been said about what exactly these companies are racing for. We're going to send it over now to our Bloomberg editor-at-large, Corey Johnson, for more. Corey?
Yeah, that's right, Emily. So these companies, what are they racing for? Well, a $7 trillion market is the prediction. They expect that half the world's vehicles will be autonomous by the year 2050. It's according to a study that Intel worked on with a market research company called Strategy Analytics. It's really interesting stuff. Joining me to talk about it right now, Intel's Stacy Smith. He's the Group President of Manufacturing Operations and Sales. Joining me from Santa Clara. Stacy, glad to have you on this. This is a fascinating study with some really big ideas here. What's the biggest idea in all of this?
Well, I just think it's how transformative this is going to be. I mean, imagine a world where getting from place to place, transportation, like information, becomes in essence free. And it just starts to change everything. It changes how you consume information. It changes how you think about owning a vehicle. It gives you time back. It makes the world a safer place. And you know, we've seen disruptions like this in the past, and it's huge opportunities for companies, and it's huge threats for companies. It can disrupt entire industries.
The adoption rate's a really interesting prediction here, that they sort of get to a tipping point of more than half of the vehicles on the road in 2050. Talk to me about sort of how you imagine that happening over time. The report hints at it, doesn't really describe sort of the evolution of it, but I would imagine it starts at really high-end vehicles and they get cheaper and cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, if you just think about it in a more near-term timeline, I think what you're going to see is, you know, over the next 5 years, you'll see tens of millions of autonomous cars on the road, but they're going to be autonomous in the sense that they're doing the driving for you, but you still are sitting there with the steering wheel, and there'll be times where you're going to want to take control of the vehicle. You go out another 5 years from there, and you're going to start to see an increase in penetration of cars that are fully autonomous, and so those cars, think of them more like a pod. You're gonna get in. There's not going to be a steering wheel, and they're going to take you from place to place. You're going to get out, and then that car is going to pick up the next person or move to some place to be charged, and then come back into the game. And so you'll see an adoption curve that plays through, but I think you'll start to see a lot of this in the next 5 to 10 years.
There was also this interesting notion in the study of this vignette describing a family in Germany living outside of Berlin, and the car was sort of running out and doing errands. I was kind of picturing something like your Amazon Echo, and you yell at it to get you your lunch and get you the dry cleaning in your suitcase for your trip later that day. And that, what it also spoke to was this idea of car ownership in the future, not just sort of mobility as a service.
No, exactly. I mean, I think, and that's why this is important to be thinking about now. It disrupts so many different industries, and so, you know, I think that you'll see kind of 3 big impacts from this. So first of all, transportation becomes almost free. You know, the utilization of vehicles goes up; they become electric, and so, you know, the way you think about getting from place to place, or the way you think about getting a good delivered to you, I think changes dramatically. I think we give people a lot of productive time back, and they can decide, you know, whether they're going to use that for work or to connect with friends or family or to consume content. And I think we can eliminate a lot of deaths on the roads that are caused by human error. And so it just has some fundamental implications on the worldwide economy.
Yeah, well, the death stuff is no small thing there. But there's also a suggestion of a lot more time that people will have to do stuff. And it had me thinking about things like 5G, about connectivity, about tablets and smartphones, or whatever the devices are in that era 20, 30 years from now that Intel surely wants to be a part of. Is that part of the notion there, that Intel is just going to be so much more computing happening because people are going to have their feet up instead of their hands on the steering wheel?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, think about the car as being this really powerful computer that's connected to the server infrastructure. You know, just data from today in the U.S., an average person spending 5 hours a week in their vehicle. In Britain, it's more like 10 hours a week in their vehicle. And so now that time moves to be completely productive time. And you can use it to work, you can use it to connect, you can use it to consume content, you can use it to shop, you can actually probably use it to consume services when you think about this out 10 or 15 years. And you're going to get some of that time back, because when you're in this fully autonomous world, the cars and the grid and the traffic patterns become much more efficient. And so it gives you time back, and it gives you time that you can use to enjoy yourself or to be productive.
It's mind-blowing stuff. Hey, I've got to ask you, the big news of the week from Apple, using better, faster Intel chips, maybe faster chips like they might have introduced a while back. What does this mean, the Apple business, for Intel, especially in a world where other PC companies are seeing contraction in their business?
Yeah, I mean, and we've talked about this before over the years. You know, innovation is so good for us, and when we see innovative companies like Apple that are introducing things that people are really hungry to go buy, it's just wonderful for them. It's wonderful for us, and we're super pleased to be a partner to Apple to just help them to deliver this kind of technological innovation to the marketplace. I have to say, in their new Pro line, I saw some of those yesterday as I was reading through the news reports, and it's one of those things I was really wanting to go out and buy, and that's exciting for us.
Yeah, those 18 cores of a Xenon processor sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Stacy Smith, thank you so much. I always appreciate it. This report's really a fascinating one. I'll put it on my Twitter as well because it was really mind-blowing stuff. Stacy Smith is the Executive Vice President of Manufacturing, Operations, and Sales. Emily?
All right, Corey Johnson, our editor-at-large. Thanks so much. Well, Toshiba has reasserted the right to sell its chip business. The Japanese company has rebuffed its American manufacturing partner, Western Digital. That company wants to derail the deal on concerns the chip unit may fall into the hands of competitors. But Western Digital hasn't been able to match the price offered by other bidders. Coming up, more news out of Uber. Will bring you the latest development of the ride-hailing startup's internal investigation into sexual harassment next. And a feature I'd like to bring to your attention, our new interactive TV function. Find it at Bloomberg TV Go. You can watch us live. If you miss an interview, you can go back to us. You can send our producers a message, play along with the charts that we bring you on air. This is for Bloomberg subscribers only. Check it out at TV Go. This is Bloomberg. Tesla plans to build another factory because the current one is, quote, bursting at the seams. That's according to CEO Elon Musk. Musk says the electric car maker is still deciding on the location for a factory to build the Model Y crossover, which could debut as soon as late 2019. Tesla has surpassed General Motors, Honda, and Ford Motor in market cap this year. More developments on Uber now, and the probes looking into the company's alleged workplace violations. Bloomberg understands one of the investigations is said to include the handling of a case involving the rape and kidnap of a woman by an Uber driver in India in 2014. For the latest, we're joined now by Bloomberg tech reporter Eric Newcomer, who covers Uber for us. So, why is this rape case from India back in 2014 coming up now? What happened?
Right. So we learned that top executives, Travis Kalanick, the CEO, and Emil Michael, the chief business officer and his chief deputy, had been skeptical that this rape had actually occurred, and had sort of propagated a conspiracy theory that Ola, their competitor, might have planted it for some time, and that Travis, even after the conviction happened for the driver, sort of continued to float this theory that the rape hadn't occurred. So something that's deeply troubling to employees at Uber.
There's an executive you call out specifically, Eric Alexander.
Right.
He's based in India. What did he have to do with it?
So he's like a business development guy, but was really sort of dealing with some of the case and investigating a little bit, and got the case file from Uber's attorneys, which included the detailed medical reports of this rape victim, and sort of he carried it with him, and was fairly cavalier in the opinion of some employees about how he treated the case file.
Now, does Eric Alexander still work at the company?
No, he left basically after we started asking questions about it.
So do we know if this was a result of the sexual harassment investigation or as a result of your reporting? Yeah,
there's some muddying of the water. It doesn't seem like he's one of the 20 people that was let go yesterday, but there are a lot of factors, and you have to remember that this Holder report is also coming, and that we could see further departures coming from this separate Holder report rather than the Perkins Coie investigation we saw on Tuesday.
So what are we expecting to learn in this Holder report that we haven't learned already?
So the Holder report was initially, Arianna Huffington promised us findings. Now we're hearing more that it's going to be recommendations, and that the findings are going to be held tightly by the board. And so they're still seemingly working on what the recommendations are, but there are going to be some recommendations about how to fix this company that's in scandal after scandal after scandal after scandal.
So how is this all affecting the internal culture of the company? I know you're on the phone a lot.
Yeah.
I know you're talking to sources all the time. What are people telling you?
I don't think this is helping the mood. I think people were optimistic about sort of the purge of, 20 employees who had, sexual harassment, discrimination, retaliation complaints against them on Tuesday. But I think there's still a lot more bigger sort of questions about the company's culture, and that's not going to satisfy them. And then this case, for employees that didn't know about it, which is a lot of the new people, it's certainly going to be troubling to them.
All right, Eric Newcomer, who covers Uber for Bloomberg Tech, thanks so much for giving us that update. And that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. This Thursday, special coverage of the UK election will be airing. Instead of Bloomberg Tech, tune in for our 1-hour special live from London, starting 5 p.m. Eastern, where you will get instant analysis of the markets as exit polls are published. And Bloomberg Tech is live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Bloomberg Tech TV weekdays, 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. That's all for now. This is Bloomberg.